Why do you think it's key that the founder is the person who stays at the helm with the product versus delegating that piece to a product manager or somebody who can maybe, build on what they started with?
Yeah, well, it's a and what I'm about to say, you should realize not everybody agrees with us. There are different schools of thought. Some people believe that it's good when you reach a certain size to bring in a professional manager, sort of the stereotypical MBA from wherever to come in. I'm not in that school. I believe, and if you look at the most successful companies, they're almost, they're not always, but most of the time they are led by their founders that grew into that role. And so I'm much more interested in coaching and helping those founders to become the leader their companies need them to be than to, you just need to get out of the way and let us bring in a professional, adult supervision. You've probably heard the phrase. And I think what's really going on is, that spark you were alluding to is not a minor thing. That is right at the essence of that company. And you have to realize this founder was there from T0, right? From the very, very beginning, from before the beginning, was probably dreaming about the company as they were deciding to, take a very risky move and try to build this thing. And if every single experiment that was done, every single customer encounter, every single mistake that was made, how do you capture that? I mean, I don't know anybody that's really figured out a good way to capture that. And so bringing in some professional, so-called professional, yes, they might be very experienced leading large organizations and providing Wall Street everything they need, but they don't know what made that company what it is today. They don't know what's important and what's accidental. They don't have that institutional knowledge, and they really have a hard time without that creating or even explaining the product vision that's necessary for the next several years. So I'm firmly in the school where I believe taking that founder and providing them the skills they need to grow. And in most cases, that's exactly what happens.
You said bringing somebody in from the outside, they don't know what's important and what's accidental.
Right.
That's a very interesting phrase. There are things that are core to an organization, core values of the founder. But say more about the accidental piece.
Yeah. Well, in fact, this is a super hard problem. When I joined eBay, it was young, a company. That was my last sort of real company where I was not on my own. And I was attracted to the company because of the founders. In particular, Pierre Omidyar was the co-founder of eBay, and just a genuine, really inspirational guy. He's gone on to be a major philanthropist, which is not surprising to me. He was just a genuine human. And I was brought on as their original head of product, but really he was their original head of product as the founder. And what I wanted to do was make sure that I could take eBay forward and not lose the essence of eBay. So the very first things that I did was sit down with him to try. In fact, I remember I wrote a document, which I shared all over the company, called eBay Secret Sauce, which was just an internal document. And it was from my discussions with him about, of all the things that make up eBay. I'm sure all your, listeners know eBay, the marketplace, but all the things that make it up, what's really important and what's just accidental because something had to be there. But if it changed, wouldn't matter. But certain things, if they changed, you could literally, kill the golden goose. And it was a very profitable company and a very, off to a great start. It was making money from the beginning. So on one level, you just don't want to mess it up. On another level, you want to be able to build on what he's done. So luckily, he stayed on and is still a board member. But you don't lose all of that. But And to be honest, not that it was my choice. Nobody even asked me, but I think it would have been better for the company if he had stayed as their leader. But anyway, they decided to bring in a professional, and it's not like they did terrible. They didn't. But it's also fair to say that at the time we were twice the size of Amazon, and today eBay is minuscule compared to Amazon.
It's an interesting exercise you did. You proactively decided to interview him and figure out the secret sauce. I'm imagining the founder of a construction company who's got 50 employees. They're listening to this conversation going, man, I wish a Marty would come along and interview me about the secret sauce. What types of questions were you asking? What are the things you were documenting? Say more about that process.
Yeah, well, I want to be clear. This is definitely not a science. It's more an art. I wish there was more like rigor about that. But what I wanted to understand was his views about why he made the decisions he made. And I've done this with lots of founders, by the way. We often refer to these as product principles. Like, it's not so much that it matters that this looks this way. What matters is what was in his head. What were his values? What were his priorities? So I'll give you a very real example, and I think this is very relevant for the world today. And one of the things, honestly, that very much impressed me about him, he was very conscious. I mean, he literally did state in one of the earliest product principles that he believed that most people are good people, which I love. I mean, I think eBay is sort of built on this idealistic notion of the world being largely trusted. But he also knew that not everybody was good. And we had an obligation to protect the good people from the bad. And so right from the beginning, he designed in mechanisms around protecting what we referred to as trust and safety. You should be, and you have to realize in early eBay, this was before PayPal, this is before electronic ways. People paid by sending checks through the mail. That's hard to even remember. I
do remember now that you say it, but we've forgotten about those days.
And so much was predicated on, do I trust you enough to send a check and that you'll send me what you're saying you've got? But he proactively worried about that. Now, to me, there was a deep principle there about both trusting people, but also ethics. About it is our obligation to make sure we think through the bad actor scenario and do everything we can to protect it. I haven't actually told that story in a long time. It's been a while, but so many tech companies I meet today, especially tech companies, in my opinion, don't think enough about the ethical implications of what they're doing. We say they just pursue the happy path. Nobody would ever do anything awful. It'll be fine. Kids won't get into trouble. The environment won't suffer. None of those. And of course, that's not the real world. And I wish companies like Facebook did more, like Pierre did more to worry about bad actors and what we can do to prevent it. But the point was that was part of his ethos.
Yes.
And I saw that and I wanted to capture that. So we came up with a number of principles that really captured what led him to make the choices he did. Because frankly, I thought we should continue to make those choices. First of all, it was still his company, his primary owner, but also it was a great recipe.
It sounds like you really took something that was innate and inside of him and kind of drew it out of him and turned it into something that was tangible, that clarified where his head and heart were at, but then also could be transferred to the broader team.
That's
I'm curious,
exactly the goal. Yeah.
When you start to unpack that for the rest of the team, what were the benefits of that? How did that manifest in decision making? How did that become a filter for things the team would do and not do?
Well, stop me if I tell too many eBay stories, but another one is coming to mind where this is it was a different principle. And what was going on, most of your audience will know eBay is a marketplace. There are buyers and sellers. And you probably know, because a lot of people may in fact be sellers on eBay. The money comes from sellers. Right? Sellers list an item, they pay a little fee, and if they sell the item, they pay a little fee. But that's basically how the income comes. And in very early eBay, we had, there was very little help for sellers. It was remarkable. The main reason sellers came was because all these buyers were there. But we made it very difficult, unfortunately, unintentionally. It was very difficult for them to give us money, ironically. But we realized that we needed to improve a lot as fast as we could, and we got to work. But what we started noticing was some of the things that sellers wanted us to do were actually not good for buyers. Now, that wasn't obvious at first, but then it started to become clear. That made total sense for a seller, but not good for a buyer. And increasingly, we felt this tension in the teams. I mean, sometimes it was just shouting matches, but there was a tension there especially between the team working to help sellers and the team working to help buyers. And what we realized was there is a product principle here that we were missing. And there was very explicit conversations with Pierre about this. About, look where this is going, Pierre. What does this mean? And he realized that there was a principle in his heart, in his mind, that we had not spelled out. And because of that, we were starting to get into trouble. We were starting to make judgments that were really against what he would have done. And we ended up calling the way we ended up realizing is that, yes, the revenue comes from sellers. However, there's really only one reason the sellers come to eBay, and that's because of the buyers. And so what we realized was the principle was, if the needs of a buyer and a seller are in conflict, we are going to prioritize the needs of the buyers, because that's the best thing we could actually do for sellers. Now, when I say that now, it sounds so obvious. Back then, it wasn't so obvious, because there was so much pressure coming in to give sellers what they needed in order to sell more and to us to make more revenue. So, and I believe if that principle had not been articulated and shared, which immediately removed tension and made decisions so much easier for everybody, eBay might not even be here today, literally.